Okay, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into something really fascinating. It's this spiritual framework called the Soul Accelerator.
Oh, wow.
And it's from this document that just kind of appeared in my inbox. And I got to say, the idea that you can actually like speed up your spiritual development really caught my eye.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
I mean, most spiritual traditions are about, patience and gradual progress.
Yeah.
But to think we could accelerate our growth, that's pretty exciting.
It is like having a roadmap and like a gas pedal for your soul, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So how does this document, how does it define the Soul Accelerator?
Well, it talks about it like it's a tool, like a metaphorical tool, for understanding and then actually accelerating spiritual growth.
Hmm.
It's about um, moving beyond just existing
Mm.
and moving towards a life that's more conscious, more harmonious, and more meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's not just about reaching some distant spiritual goal. It's about making our everyday lives, like right now, more fulfilling.
Exactly. And the core of it, the core of the whole Soul Accelerator idea is this: making conscious moral choices. Choices that are in sync with what it calls divine values. That's how we can speed up the development of our souls.
Hold on, divine values. That sounds a little, I don't know, heavy. Does it get into specifics about what those are?
Well, it doesn't lay out like a strict set of rules or anything, but it emphasizes things like truth, goodness,
Mhm.
beauty. Like those are the guiding principles, and aligning our choices with these values, that says that's like fuel for our soul's journey.
Got it. So it's less about following a rigid doctrine and more about cultivating a certain way of being in the world?
Yes. It's about making choices that reflect a deeper understanding of ourselves
Mm.
and our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay. Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture here, but before we go any further, I'm curious. How does this document define the soul itself? Is it something we're born with, or does it develop over time?
This is where things get really interesting. The document, it actually suggests the soul isn't something we're born with. It suggests it emerges when we make our first significant moral decision.
Wait, so our soul is born out of our choices. That's a pretty radical idea.
I know, right? It is. And the document even says this usually happens around the age of 5, when children start to develop a sense of right and wrong. So think back to your own childhood. Can you pinpoint a moment that might have been your soul's, well, birth?
Hmm. That's a good question. I remember getting into this huge fight with my best friend over a toy. Maybe that was it. Not exactly a shining moment of spiritual awakening, but it definitely felt significant at the time.
Right. I mean, every choice we make, big or small, contributes to shaping our soul. And from that point forward, from that first moral decision, the document says our souls continue to grow through our moral choices and actions, especially ones aligned with truth, goodness, and beauty.
So it's like we're constantly like molding and shaping our souls through our actions.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. And the ultimate goal of all this, of this whole process, is to achieve unity with what the document calls um, God.
Hmm.
And that concept, it signifies like a higher spiritual reality.
Okay, so we've got this soul that's developing through our choices, and
Hmm.
the end goal is reaching unity with this higher power. But how do we navigate that journey? I mean, life is full of tough choices. How do we know which path to take?
Well, that's where the thought adjuster comes in. It's described as a fragment of this higher power that resides within each of us, guiding us toward those right choices.
Whoa, wait. You're saying there's like a built-in spiritual compass inside each of us. That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? And the document, it describes this thought adjuster as a gentle guide. It influences us to make decisions that are, in line with those divine values we talked about earlier. It's that inner nudge you feel towards kindness when you're tempted to be, selfish, or the sense of peace you get when you act with integrity.
That's pretty mind-blowing. It's like having a personal spiritual advisor living inside of us. Have you ever felt this thought adjuster at work in your own life?
I think we all have. I think we've all experienced those moments where we felt a sense of clarity or guidance that seemed to come from beyond our own understanding, like moments of sudden insight or unexpected opportunities, or, a deep inner knowing that something is the right thing to do, even when it doesn't make logical sense. Maybe that's the thought adjuster, nudging us in the right direction.
I love that idea. It makes you realize we're not alone in this journey. But even with this inner guidance, figuring out where we are on our spiritual path, I imagine that can be tricky. Is there anything in the document that can help us make sense of where we stand?
There is. The document introduces this concept of spiritual numbers. And they're presented as a framework for understanding the soul's journey and its different stages of growth.
Spiritual numbers. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What kind of numbers are we talking about here?
Well, there are a few key sequences. One is 2134. It's described as the four-stage journey to enlightenment.
4 stages to enlightenment, huh? Okay, break that down for me. What do those stages actually look like?
Well, each number represents a different phase of spiritual development. It all starts with 2. That signifies balance, duality. Think of it as integrating the physical and the spiritual sides of ourselves.
So it's about recognizing that we're not just physical beings, we're spiritual beings too.
Exactly. And then we move on to 1, which represents like the initial aha moment, when we realize our connection to something larger than ourselves, that feeling of unity with the divine reality.
Like a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, very much so. From there, we progress to 3, which is all about embodying spiritual principles, but in our daily lives. It's not enough to just have the intellectual understanding. We have to live those principles in our actions, in our interactions.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And finally, we arrive at 4, which symbolizes stability, renewal, and becoming an agent of positive change in the world, reaching a level of spiritual maturity where we can share our wisdom, our compassion with others.
Wow, that's quite a journey. It makes you wonder where you are on that path,
Exactly. It's a framework for self-reflection. I mean, where do you feel like you are on this 4-stage journey?
That's a good question. I think I'm somewhere between 2 and 1. Definitely working on that balance and starting to get those glimpses of a larger connection. What about you?
I think we're all constantly moving through these stages, sometimes back and forth. It's not a linear progression, it's more like a spiral where we revisit these themes at different levels of understanding.
Right. Okay, so 2134, that's the overarching journey. What about these other spiritual numbers?
Right. Well, another significant number is 2000. And this document describes it as a symbol of transition. It seems to suggest, like a collective shift in consciousness, a movement towards a new era of spiritual awakening.
That's interesting. We're on the cusp of something big.
Yeah, it does seem to imply that. And then there's 134, which is presented as a 3-stage purification process.
A purification process. That sounds intense. What's involved in that?
Well, it seems to focus on the inner work.
Yeah.
The inner work required for spiritual growth. And the first stage, awareness, that's about recognizing, that divine spark within ourselves and seeking a deeper purpose.
Kind of like that saying, know thyself.
Yeah, exactly. It's about connecting with our true essence, and then comes integration, where we align our actions with our spiritual values. Practicing kindness and love in our interactions.
So putting those values into practice, not just thinking about them.
Right. And finally we reach unification, a state of profound oneness.
Yeah.
With that higher power, experiencing lasting peace and purpose.
That sounds like the culmination of the entire journey.
It does, doesn't it? It's that ultimate state of connection and harmony that we're all striving for.
Okay. So we've got these different numerical sequences outlining the soul's journey, the stages of growth, and this purification process. But there's one more concept I'm just dying to ask about. The language of hyperspace. What in the world does that mean?
That's definitely one of the more esoteric ideas in the document.
Yeah.
It suggests that that spiritual truths, they're often conveyed through a symbolic language, and it takes a certain level of spiritual understanding to decipher.
So it's like a secret code that only the spiritually attuned can understand.
That's one way to look at it. The document even mentions the Urantia book as an example, and that's a text known for its complex cosmology and symbolic language.
But how do we learn to speak this language? Do we need to decode ancient texts?
It's not necessarily about deciphering specific text. It's more about developing, our spiritual sensitivity, so that we can perceive the deeper layers of meaning in our experiences.
So it's like developing a sixth sense for spiritual truth.
It is a bit like that.
Yeah.
It's about paying attention to the subtle signs, the synchronicities, the intuitive nudges that are always guiding us. It's about recognizing the language of the soul.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit, a part of me is wondering, like, why does any of this matter? I mean, we're all just trying to, get through our day-to-day lives, right? Is all this spiritual stuff, is it really necessary?
That's a valid question.
Yeah.
And the document addresses it head on.
Yeah.
It argues that without actively cultivating our spiritual growth, we risk becoming trapped in a cycle of mere survival.
So it's not enough to just go through the motions of life. We need to be intentional about our spiritual development.
Yeah. Exactly. The Soul Accelerator, it's a call to awaken to our true potential, to become conscious creators of our own destinies and to align our lives with a higher purpose.
I like that. It's empowering, isn't it? The idea that we have the power to shape our own spiritual evolution. But how do we put all of this into practice? It all sounds great in theory, but where do we even start?
Well, the document actually offers some practical advice for applying these principles, but in our daily lives,
Yeah.
first and foremost, it emphasizes self-reflection. Take some time to, honestly assess where you are on your spiritual journey. Which stage of that four-stage journey we talked about, which one resonates most strongly with your current experience.
Okay, so step one is getting to know ourselves better, spiritually speaking. Then what?
The next step is cultivating moral awareness. Start paying closer attention to the ethical implications of your everyday choices. Ask yourself, is this action aligned with my values? Is it contributing to my spiritual growth, or is it hindering it?
So it's about bringing that spiritual lens to every decision we make.
Exactly. And it's not just about the big life-altering choices either. It's about the small everyday decisions as well.
Like whether to gossip about a coworker
Yeah.
or offer a helping hand.
Exactly. Every choice is an opportunity to practice those divine values that we talked about. And the more we do that, the more we accelerate our soul's growth.
Okay, self-reflection, moral awareness, got it. What else?
The document also stresses the importance of listening to your intuition. Learn to pay attention to the guidance of the thought adjuster, that inner compass pointing you in the right direction.
So we're talking about those gut feelings, those subtle nudges that we get.
Right. Exactly. Trust those whispers of wisdom. They might just be your thought adjuster at work.
Yeah.
And of course engaging in spiritual practices can be incredibly powerful for accelerating soul growth, whether it's meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, acts of service to others. All of these activities nourish the soul and deepen our connection to the divine.
Yeah, it's like giving your soul a workout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, live with purpose. Align your actions with your deepest values and strive to make a positive impact on the world around you.
I love that. It's like taking all of these insights and actually putting them into action, not just understanding the concepts, but actually embodying them in our lives. This has been such an incredible deep dive, honestly, like mind-blowing at times. So as we wrap things up, can we revisit those key takeaways from the Soul Accelerator framework one last time?
Absolutely. The core message is that our choices, they matter. Every decision, every action has the potential to either accelerate or hinder our spiritual progress. And the choices that propel us forward, those are the ones aligned with truth, with goodness, with beauty, and ultimately with the will of what the document calls God.
And we have this amazing tool, right? This thought adjuster, this inner spark guiding us towards those right choices, plus those spiritual numbers. They provide a roadmap,
Yeah.
helping us understand where we are on our journey and what the next steps might be.
And the document, it also reminds us that spiritual growth, it's an ongoing process. There's no finish line, right?
Yeah.
It's about continuous evolution, striving to become the best versions of ourselves and aligning our lives with a higher purpose.
This whole deep dive has really sparked my curiosity about my own spiritual path. I'm thinking back to that first defining moral choice, the one that supposedly marks the birth of the soul. Mine wasn't exactly a shining moment of spiritual brilliance, but hey, everyone start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
What was your first impactful moral choice, listener? What might it say about your soul's journey? Perhaps this deep dive has inspired you to take a closer look at your own choices, your own motivations, and to consider how you might how you might accelerate your own spiritual growth.
Remember, even the smallest act of kindness, the tiniest shift in perspective, can have a ripple effect, accelerating your journey toward greater spiritual awareness, connection, and purpose.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the Soul Accelerator. Until next time, keep those souls revving.